globalized milieu, cutting these global processes across a rather high elevation that emphasizes the availability of works within the cinematic canon. Presenting neither myopic nationalism nor equivocal cosmopolitanism, they instead build upon the histories of the site as a crossroads, thereby complicating arguments of globalization's novelty within local contexts. So that's kind of the larger frame for that chapter. Chapter 3 moves into the space of the multiplex, which is one of the most ubiquitous spaces in Manila. And of course, the mall has been discussed as it is manifest in Manila. And, by many scholars, Vicente Rafael notes it in his work on The Cell Phone in the Crowd, and of course, Rolando Tolentino has written about the mall in Manila as well. Okay, so Multiplex Fiesta is the name that the Bagong Agos Festival, which sort of launched the Indie Cine screen in Robinson's. One of the journalists covering it actually called it the sort of, that it was a fiesta, and I thought it was sort of nice to juxtapose that with the kind of generic term multiplex. So the decay of the multiplex, the rise of Indie Cine, and the spectacle of independent cinema. Okay, so this on the left is actually from a 1996 issue of Asia Week. And it's a political cartoon that's entitled The Illustrated Prophecies, which envisions Mega Manila as being completely enclosed within malls. And so part of what the chapter talks about, not necessarily at length, is this discourse of the mall. And then the other site is the Indie Cine complex. Okay, so in 2007, the Philippine Independent Filmmakers Multipurpose Cooperative partnered with Robinson's, a local mall chain, in order to occupy a single screen in the Galleria shopping mall dedicated to Philippine independent cinema. More than providing a space for the exhibition of independent films, which would otherwise have trouble finding local screen space, the venue also problematizes ideas of the multiplex as a generic transnational space that provides little more than concrete form for globalized capitalist homogeneity. Unlike the hard-to-find, out-of-the-way insiderness of its art house equivalents, the multiplex occupies a very visible position within the quasi-public space of the highly trafficked mall, thus performing the revitalization of a purportedly dying local film industry, a rebirth with a specific nationalist, quote, independent stamp. This chapter first looks at the role of the mall in Manila, then discusses the decline of the multiplex in Manila as it is narrativized into the history of Philippine cinema, despite an increase in consumers. Okay, so the first part is going to talk about the way that the multiplex has sort of declined. Despite an increase in consumer spending, the number of Manileños frequenting movie theaters is steadily declining. And in 2006, some cinemas were only at 7% capacity. While other countries in Asia are steadily increasing the number of screens, the Philippines is losing them. And in the years from 1996 to 2004, the country experienced a 50% drop in cinema attendance, which is the steepest in the world. Many emphasize piracy as the reason for movie houses' decline. The president of the Anti-Film Piracy Council and vice president for operations of SM Supermalls, a kind of telling double role, Warren. Despite high capital investments in renovating and upgrading the cinemas, especially the audiovisual equipment, we are trying to work with it, and yet the attendance is going down. I believe the government is not aware that they're losing over 1 billion pesos in amusement taxes, and the worst is that more cinemas will be closing. Don't be surprised if Filipinos will one day watch movies again in Plaza Miranda if they will really be looking for big screens. That is, if they will not do what they are supposed to do. The recommendations of what Filipinos are, quote, supposed to do include distributors' refusal to prints to exhibitors and malls that permit the selling of pirated optical discs, and viewers making a, quote, citizen's arrest if they notice fellow audience members with cameras. The quote demonstrates the regulatory environment of the mall, which has been much discussed, making its way into the mode of viewership performed within the multiplex space, wherein viewers act as proxy guards and security cameras. Moreover, the quote positions Plaza Miranda, a space culturally synonymous with democracy and the voice of the masses, as the unwelcome option awaiting Filipino audiences with the disappearance of the multiplex. He thereby emphasizes the divide between this most public of Philippine spaces against the, quote, big screens of the privatized mall multiplex. Absent within this argument are the film industry's own critique of the state's heavy amusement taxes, as well as the contention that the theaters themselves are responsible for decreased attendance through high admission fees, quote, one of the factors that is driving away our movie patrons from the theaters and forcing them to patronize pirated DVDs. This is according to Party List Representative Florencio Noel. Locating the reasons for declining cinema attendance with the exhibitors rather than audiences, Noel urges, quote, this is hurting even our local film industry. There should be a middle ground between box office profit and providing affordable public entertainment. The disregard for such arguments about admission costs and overtaxation, coupled with the emphasis on controlling the public through compliance to normative institutional modes of comportment and consumption, reflects the class issues at the center of multiplex cinema consumption. One columnist describes her preference for the affluent multiplex of Shangri-La Mall in terms of the orderliness of the guests and the theater's cleanliness, rather than the high-class image of an A-B market of the mall, as she calls it. While another study shows that while affluent markets see a movie once a month, usually foreign, they also have a taste for local products, but choose not to see them in malls, particularly the more affluent malls of Greenbelt or Podium. Whether a growing massa fondness for foreign cinema parallels this elitista affection for local cinema is unclear. So this division of cinematic fare into local versus foreign provides the framework for much discussion of cinema screens' disappearance in the Philippines. The presumption is that local cinema means local commercial cinema, as these are the films that compete with the onslaught of global works. Dominic Du of the National Cinema Association of the Philippines states, quote, what is written here in the movie schedules is a testament to the collapse of the Philippine movie industry, end quote. Speaking in 2007, Du stated that while 17 Filipino movies were scheduled through June, he had scheduled 21 foreign films for the first half of the year from just one Hollywood studio, Columbia Pictures. A former movie producer, Du recalls the Filipino industry's production of over 200 films per year, a number which decreased after the 1997 Asian financial crisis. While Hollywood has had a foothold in the Philippine film industry for decades, many believe this is the worst the situation has ever been, with Hollywood, quote, bulldozing the local market. So that these multiplex closures signal the end of the industry, or at the very least a turning point, suggests the dependency of the local industry on these multiplexes, which have long been the only screens available for viewing cinema. Independent theaters that thrived during the 1980s, such as Paramount, Circle, and Delta theaters in Quezon City, have either closed or been converted into makeshift church venues for Christian organizations. Major mall operators inherited this market. So Kamaligan reflects, quote, when SM opened 8 theaters in SM North in the mid-80s, the movie patrons opted to watch there. It's more convenient, there's better quality of entertainment, it's clearer and colder. So perhaps because of the present unstable state of multiplex cinemas, Robinson's Galleria provided a space for the, quote, new wave of independent Filipino films within the globalized consumerism of the Filipino multiplex, ostensibly a gesture of support towards the local independent film industry. The multiplex screen bookended its first year with the launching festival celebrating the new wave of Filipino digital cinema, and an end-of-the-year festival exposing human rights violations, each promoting and problematizing particular variations of national cinema. Okay, so then the chapter basically moves into discussion of indie cine itself. So the indie cine space opened on January 16, 2007 with the Bagong Agos, or festival, which celebrated the, quote, current wave of Philippine digital cinema. Digital cinema in this instance is synonymous with independent cinema, and in addition to simply opening the venue, the festival functioned as a mode of positioning this current wave of films within the history of Philippine cinema. As such, the festival operated according to a particular history of Philippine national cinema, within which the new wave becomes a beacon of hope for Philippine filmmaking, which is intrinsically linked to both the medium of its creation and the space of its exhibition. Both the digital and the multiplex position these works as a new kind of national cinema within the context of globalized modernity, operating within this compulsory environment. The rhetoric surrounding indie cine's location within the multiplex constructs the idea of the screen as a space of inadvertent encounter between independent cinema and a broad Filipino audience constructed here as mall goers. And so this is from Imam de la Cruz's program, statement in the program accompanying the festival. So here's the chance we've been waiting for. Here's a prominent cinema chain inspired enough for